The great chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive structure built from materials that bent light around its edges. Inside, hundreds of beings from across the galaxy sat in their designated sections. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some had bodies made of flesh, others of crystal or pure energy. They were the Galactic Council, and they had been making decisions about the fate of civilizations for over 50,000 years. Dr. Sarah Chun stood in the center of the chamber, a small figure under lights that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. She wore a simple blue suit, and in her hands she held a data device that contained everything humanity wanted to share with the galaxy. Her heart pounded, but her voice remained steady. "Honored members of the Council," she began, "I come representing the people of Earth. We have achieved faster-than-light travel. We have cured most diseases that once plagued our species. We have learned to live in peace after centuries of war. We asked to join the Galactic Council as full members." A being that looked like a floating jellyfish made of gold light spoke first. Its voice came through a translator that made it sound musical. "We have reviewed your application, human. Your achievements are noted." Sarah felt a surge of hope, but the tone that followed crushed it immediately. However, another voice said, this one belonging to a creature with 6 arms and skin like polished stone, "Your species is remarkably young. You discovered radio waves only 300 of your years ago. You nearly destroyed yourselves with nuclear weapons. You still have poverty and conflict on your homeworld." A third voice joined in, deep and rumbling, from something that resembled a living mountain. "The Valorian people mastered energy manipulation 12,000 years before you left your caves. The Kresh explored 1,000 star systems while your ancestors were still learning to make fire. The precursors built wonders across galaxies before any of us existed." Sarah opened her mouth to respond, but the voices continued, overlapping each other in a cascade of dismissal. "Your faster-than-light drives are crude, inefficient. Your AI systems are barely sentient. Your genetic engineering is primitive. Your art, while charming, lacks the complexity we've come to expect from advanced civilizations." Finally, silence fell. Sarah's hands gripped her data device so hard her knuckles turned white. But she kept her face calm, professional. A new voice spoke, this one careful and measured. It belonged to Zethan, the Council's archivist, a being that appeared as a cluster of rotating crystalline shapes. "Dr. Chun, please understand. We are not saying humanity has no potential. We are saying you are not ready. You are too young, too inexperienced. The galaxy is vast and complex. There are trade agreements older than your written language. There are conflicts you cannot understand. There are technologies that could destroy you if mishandled. Then teach us," Sarah said. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber. "Help us grow. Share your knowledge." Zethan's crystals rotated slowly. "That is not how the Council operates. Species must reach certain developmental milestones on their own. It ensures stability. It ensures worthiness. And what is our status?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer would hurt. Zethan's crystals pulsed with light. "The Council has voted. Humanity is granted observer status as a minor emergent species. You may send an observer to our public sessions, but you may not vote, may not participate in trade networks, and may not expand beyond your home star system without explicit Council permission. These restrictions will remain in place for a minimum of 1,000 standard years, at which point you may reapply for membership." 1,000 years, Sarah repeated quietly. "It seems long to you, but it is brief to us," the golden jellyfish said, almost kindly. "Use this time to mature, to develop, to prove yourselves worthy of a place among the great civilizations. And if we don't agree to these terms?" Sarah asked. The chamber grew cold. The being with 6 arms leaned forward. Then you will be classified as a rogue civilization. Council ships will enforce a quarantine of your system. Any attempt to leave will be met with force. Your choice is simple. Accept observer status or accept isolation. Sarah stood very still. Around her, nearly 1,000 eyes, sensors, and awareness fields focused on her response. She thought about Earth, about the billions of people waiting for her report. She thought about the scientists who had worked their entire lives to crack faster than light travel. She thought about the children who dreamed of exploring the stars. "We accept observer status," she said finally. "Wise choice," Zethan said. "Your civilization will be properly cataloged in the Great Library. Observer status is nothing to be ashamed of, Dr. Chun. Many species have started there. How will we be cataloged?" Sarah asked. Zethan's crystals shifted through colors. As entry 3,847,291, Humanity of Earth, Sol System. A minor emergent species showing typical development patterns for a carbon-based, oxygen-breathing civilization. Expected to reach full membership eligibility in approximately 1,000 to 1,500 standard years. Assuming no major setbacks. "A footnote," Sarah said softly. "I do not understand that term," Zethan replied. "A small note at the bottom of a page," Sarah explained. "Something barely worth mentioning. A minor detail in a much larger story." "Ah, yes, I suppose that is accurate from your perspective," Zethan said. "Though from the Council's perspective, you are simply young. Every species starts somewhere. And what if we refuse to be just a footnote?" Sarah asked. The chamber fell silent again. The golden jellyfish made a sound like wind chimes. "I do not understand the question." "You have already accepted observer status." "I have," Sarah agreed. "But humanity is very good at exceeding expectations." The 6-armed being made a gesture that might have been amusement. Such confidence from such a young species. "Very well, human. Surprise us. Prove that you are more than we believe you to be. The galaxy will be watching." "No," Sarah said as she turned to leave. "The galaxy will be ignoring us. You've made that very clear. But that might be the best gift you could have given us." She walked out of the chamber with her head high, even though her heart felt like lead. Behind her, the council members had already moved on to other business. Earth's application was finished, filed away, forgotten. Sarah boarded her ship and began the long journey home. She had 2 months in faster-than-light travel to prepare her report. 2 months to figure out how to tell humanity that they had been dismissed, categorized, and relegated to the margins of galactic civilization. But as her ship jumped into the strange not space between stars, Sarah Chun began to smile. The Council had made a mistake. They had given humanity restrictions, yes, but they had also given humanity something far more valuable: freedom from expectation. If the galaxy thought humanity would be just another minor footnote in their grand story, they were about to learn how wrong they were. Humans had spent their entire history being underestimated, and they had spent their entire history proving the doubters wrong. 200 years passed like a whisper through the galaxy. For the ancient species of the Council, it was barely noticeable. The Valorians continued their energy research. The Kresh expanded their military fleets. The golden jellyfish people, called the Luminari, composed songs that took decades to perform. Time moved differently when you had tens of thousands of years of recorded history. The Council's automated monitoring stations continued their regular sweeps of Earth's system, filing reports that almost no one read. Human development proceeding within expected parameters, the report said year after year. Minor expansion to neighboring planets. Increased industrial capacity. No concerns. But Zethan, the archivist, had learned something important during 50,000 years of cataloging civilizations. Sometimes the most interesting stories were the ones nobody was paying attention to. Zethan reviewed the monitoring reports personally every few decades, a habit formed from centuries of meticulous record-keeping. At first, everything seemed normal. Humans had established colonies on Mars, as expected. They had built stations around Jupiter's moons. They had started mining operations in the asteroid belt, all typical for a species at their development level. But then Zethan noticed something odd. In year 43 after humanity's application, the reports showed a sudden spike in energy consumption around Earth's sun. In year 67, several asteroids showed unusual composition changes. In year 92, there was a gap in the data that lasted for 3 days. Zethan pulled up older reports and compared them. The gaps were increasing, not in a random pattern, but in a deliberate one. Every time the monitoring stations tried to scan certain areas of the human system, the data came back corrupted or incomplete. Curious, Zethan said. Crystals pulsing with a color that indicated interest dot by year 150. The energy readings from Earth's system had increased by a factor of 10,000. That shouldn't have been possible. The Council's projections for human development suggested they should be using perhaps twice the energy they had 200 years ago, not 10,000 times more. Zethan brought the data to the Council's attention during a routine session. Most members barely glanced at it. Young species often have unpredictable energy usage patterns, the Luminary representative said dismissively. Perhaps they are being inefficient. Or perhaps they discovered fusion optimization, suggested a creche officer. That sometimes causes energy spikes. The monitoring stations may be malfunctioning, added a representative from a species that looked like a collection of floating eyes. They are old. Perhaps they need recalibration. But Zethan was not satisfied. After the session ended, the archivist used personal authority to commission a direct observation mission. A small ship, crewed by 3 volunteers from different species, was sent to Earth's system with a simple mission: find out what humanity was really doing. The ship emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system and stopped immediately. All 3 crew members stared at their sensors in complete silence. "That's impossible," whispered the pilot, a young Valorian who had thought nothing could surprise her anymore. Earth's sun was partially covered, not by natural phenomena, but by structures. Millions of structures, arranged in elegant orbital patterns that seemed to dance as the ship watched. They weren't crude solar panels like the Council had predicted humans might build. These were sophisticated, self-replicating machines that harvested energy with an efficiency that rivaled anything the Valorians had developed. A Dyson swarm, the navigator said. A creche male who had studied human history as a hobby. The humans theorized about these 200 years ago, but the Council's projections said they wouldn't build one for at least another 1,000 years. "Look at the asteroid belt," the 3rd crew member said, her voice shaking. She was from a species called the Nethran, beings of living crystal similar to Zethan. Or rather, look at where the asteroid belt used to be. The belt was gone. Completely gone. In its place were thousands of massive rotating structures, each 1 kilometers across. Habitats, clearly, but unlike anything the Council species had built. They spun in perfect synchronization, creating artificial gravity without the massive energy requirements that Council habitats needed. "How many people do you think live in those?" the pilot asked. "Billions," the navigator replied. "Maybe hundreds of billions. The humans haven't just expanded. They've exploded. But none of that compared to what they found near Mars. The gates hung in space like tears in reality itself. Massive rings of exotic matter that seemed to fold space around them. The observation ship sensors couldn't fully analyze them because they bent not just light, but every form of radiation and energy in ways that shouldn't have been possible. As they watched, A human ship approached one of the gates. The vessel was beautiful, all smooth curves and flowing lines, nothing like the blocky, functional designs the Council preferred. The gate activated with a pulse of light, and space itself seemed to bend. The human ship didn't accelerate into the gate. It simply was on one side, and then was on the other side, and in between there was a moment where it seemed to exist in both places at once. "That's not faster than light travel," the pilot said. "That's something else entirely. They've created stable wormholes," the Nethran scientist said, a crystal body flickering with colors that indicated shock. "Do you understand what that means? The Council has been trying to create stable wormholes for 30,000 years. We can't hold them open for more than a few seconds. The energy requirements are astronomical. But the humans have built gates that just sit there, stable, waiting to be used." A communication signal reached their ship. It was in perfect galactic standard, though with a distinctly human accent. "Observation vessel, this is human space traffic control. Welcome to the Sol system. We've been expecting visitors eventually. Would you like a tour, or are you just filing a report?" The three crew members looked at each other. The pilot made the decision. "This is Observation Ship 7. We accept your offer of a tour, and we would very much like to understand how you achieved all of this." A human appeared on their view screen, a middle-aged man with gray in his hair and laugh lines around his eyes. "Excellent. I'm Dr. Marcus Chun, Director of External Relations. My great-grandmother once stood before the Galactic Council. She came home and told us we were dismissed as a minor species, that we would be a footnote in galactic history. And?" The pilot asked. Marcus smiled. It was not a cruel smile, but it held a certain satisfaction. "And we decided that if we were going to be a footnote, we were going to be the most interesting footnote anyone had ever read. Follow us, please. We have a lot to show you." Over the next 3 days, the observation crew was shown wonders. They visited habitats where millions of humans lived in comfort that rivaled the best Council worlds. They saw factories that could assemble starships in hours using molecular assembly techniques the Council had deemed impossible. They met A's that were not just sentient but creative, empathetic, and fully integrated into human society as equals. But most importantly, they learned why humanity had advanced so quickly. "You gave us restrictions," Marcus explained as they stood in a viewing gallery looking out at the gate network. "You told us we couldn't join your trade networks, couldn't use your technologies, couldn't expand beyond our system without permission. Do you know what that meant to us?" "That you were limited," the Kresh navigator said. "No," Marcus replied. "It meant we were free. Free from your way of doing things. Free from your assumptions about what was possible and what wasn't. Free to ask questions you stopped asking millennia ago." He gestured at the gates. "You've been using the same faster-than-light principles for thousands of years. They work, so why change them? But we couldn't use them. We had to invent something new. And in trying to solve that one problem, we revolutionized physics." "How?" The Nethran scientist asked. Marcus laughed. "We asked a simple question. What if space is less like a wall to break through and more like paper to fold? What if distance is just a matter of perspective? Your Council treats the universe like it's fixed, and we have to fight through it. We treated it like it's flexible, and we can work with it." The pilot felt something she hadn't felt in decades. Wonder. "You're going to change everything, aren't you?" "We already have," Marcus said quietly. "The only question now is what your Council will do about it." When the observation ship returned to Council space, Zethan reviewed their report in complete silence. Then, the archivist did something unprecedented. Called for an emergency Council session to address the human situation immediately. The galaxy was about to change. Whether it was ready or not, the Council chamber was more crowded than it had been in centuries. Word had spread about the observation report, and nearly every member species had sent their highest representatives. They gathered in their sections, speaking in hundreds of languages that the translation systems worked overtime to convert. Zethan stood in the center, crystals pulsing with a deep blue that indicated seriousness. The archivist had spent weeks preparing this presentation, knowing that what came next would determine the fate of not just humanity, but possibly the entire council structure. Members of the Galactic Council, Zethan began. 200 years ago, we evaluated humanity's application for membership. We found them wanting. We classified them as a minor emergent species and restricted them to their home system. We believed this was a fair and reasonable decision based on our established protocols. A murmur went through the chamber. Everyone knew this already. Why restate the obvious? We were wrong, Zethan said simply. Silence fell like a hammer. In 50,000 years of council history, the archivist had never admitted error. The holographic displays activated, showing images from the observation mission. The Dyson swarm around Earth's sun. The massive habitats where the asteroid belt had been. The gates that bent space itself. Gasps and exclamations echoed through the chamber. Humanity has not just met our expectations, Zethan continued. They have exceeded them in ways we did not think possible. They have developed technology that rivals or surpasses our own in several key areas. They have created a civilization of hundreds of billions in a single star system. And they have done it all in 200 years. Impossible, declared a Valorian elder. No species advances that quickly. They must have received outside help. They must have stolen technology. We investigated that possibility, Zethan replied calmly. The observation team found no evidence of outside assistance. The humans developed everything themselves, using principles we overlooked because we stopped asking certain questions millennia ago. A Kresh admiral stood up, his forearms crossed over his chest. Then they are dangerous. A species that develops so quickly without guidance is unstable. History shows that such species become aggressive, expansionist. We should contain them now, before they become a threat. Other voices joined in agreement. The council chamber filled with debate, then argument, then near shouting. Some species saw opportunity. Most saw a threat. A few, like the Luminari, seemed simply fascinated by the data. Stim let them argue for nearly an hour before calling for order. The question before us is clear, the archivist said. Do we invite humanity to join the council under new terms? Do we attempt to force or do we escalate to containment and quarantine? The vote was called. It was not unanimous. In fact, it was one of the most divided votes in council history. But the result was clear. The council would send a diplomatic mission to humanity with an offer of full membership. But if that was refused, the Kresh military would enforce the original restrictions by force. The Kresh admiral, a warrior named Dask, was chosen to lead the mission. He selected a battle fleet of 30 warships, enough to overwhelm any defense the humans might have prepared. The diplomatic overture would be sincere, but the threat would be very real. Dask's fleet entered Earth's system with weapons powered but not armed, a standard show of force. Immediately, they were met by 3 human ships that moved in ways that made the Kresh sensors struggle to track them. The human vessels didn't follow normal physics. They seemed to slide sideways through space, appearing and disappearing in bursts of blue light. Human vessels. This is Admiral Dask of the Kresh Defense Fleet, representing the Galactic Council. We come to discuss your future relationship with the Council. A woman's face appeared on the view screen. She was young, perhaps 30 in human years, with dark hair and eyes that held both intelligence and something else. Amusement, maybe. Or confidence. Admiral Dask, this is Ambassador Maya Chun. Welcome to Sol System. I'm the great-granddaughter of Dr. Sarah Chun, who stood before your council 200 years ago. I've heard the stories. Let me guess. You're here to offer us membership with conditions, and if we refuse, you'll try to force us back into our box. Dask felt a moment of surprise. The humans had anticipated this exactly. You understand the situation well. We've had 200 years to think about it, Maya said. 200 years to prepare for this moment. Admiral, let me save us all some time. We don't want to join your council. The Kresh Bridge crew stirred with surprise. Dask leaned forward. You refuse membership? We refuse to be the newest junior member of an organization that dismissed us as footnotes in their grand story. Maya replied. We've built something better, and we'd like to share it with the galaxy. Before Dask could respond, something extraordinary happened. Every gate in the Sol system activated simultaneously. Thousands of wormholes opened at once, and through them came not warships, but vessels of every other kind imaginable. Medical ships, construction ships, science vessels, transport carriers. And they didn't stay in the Sol system. The gates connected to other locations across the galaxy. Human ships began emerging in Council space, in neutral territories, in systems that had been written off as too poor or too damaged to be worth settling. But the humans weren't invading. They were giving. Maya's face appeared on view screens across the entire Council communication network. Every member world, every station, every ship received the same message simultaneously. People of the galaxy, Maya said. My name is Ambassador Maya Chun, and I speak for humanity. 200 years ago, your council told us we weren't good enough, that we were too young, too primitive, too insignificant to matter. They cataloged us as a minor species, a footnote in the great library of galactic civilization. We accepted that judgment. And then we got to work. The transmission showed images of human development, the construction of the Dyson swarm, the building of the habitats, the creation of the gate network, all accomplished without council help, without council technology, without council approval. We didn't do this to prove you wrong, Maya continued. We did it because you gave us the greatest gift possible. You left us alone. You gave us freedom to fail, freedom to experiment, freedom to ask questions that you stopped asking long ago. And in that freedom, we found answers. The transmission shifted to show human ships distributing technology, medical advances that could cure diseases the Council had declared incurable, energy systems that could restore dying worlds, food production techniques that could end hunger on planets the Council had designated as lost causes. We're not asking to join your Council, Maya said. We're inviting you to join ours. A new alliance where age doesn't matter more than innovation, where cooperation matters more than hierarchy, where young species aren't dismissed but celebrated for bringing fresh perspectives. We call it the Open Alliance. Any species can join, regardless of age or technological level. The only requirements are a commitment to peaceful cooperation and a willingness to share knowledge freely. No trade restrictions. No development timelines. No arbitrary rules about who matters and who doesn't. Admiral Dask watched his tactical display as human ships continued to pour through the gates. They were everywhere now, in every corner of Council space. But they weren't threatening. They were just there, offering help to anyone who wanted it. Admiral, one of his officers said quietly, "We can't stop this. They're not attacking. They're not breaking any laws. They're just giving things away. If we open fire, we're the aggressors." Dask knew the officer was right. The humans had outmaneuvered the Council completely. They had turned a potential military confrontation into a diplomatic revolution. "Stand down weapons," Dask ordered. Then, making a decision that would probably end his military career, he opened a direct channel to Maya. "Ambassador Chun, I think we need to talk," Maya smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that, Admiral." The first Open Alliance Summit begins in 3 days at a neutral location. We've prepared facilities for any species that wants to attend. Will you be there? Das thought about the Council's long history, about the ancient species that had ruled the galaxy for so long that they'd forgotten what it was like to be young and hungry and innovative, about the countless minor species that had been dismissed as footnotes over the millennia. Yes, he said finally, I'll be there. But I should warn you, the Council won't accept this easily. We know, Maya replied. We're counting on it. Change is always uncomfortable, but it's also necessary. The galaxy has been stagnant for too long, Admiral. It's time for something new. The transmission ended. Dask stood on his bridge, looking at the tactical display that showed human ships scattered across the galaxy like seeds. His fleet, 30 powerful warships, suddenly seemed irrelevant. You couldn't fight an idea with weapons. And the humans weren't spreading conquest. They were spreading hope. The first Open Alliance Summit was held on a neutral space station that humanity had constructed specifically for the occasion. It orbited a white dwarf star in a system that belonged to no one, positioned exactly halfway between Council space and humanity's nearest colonies. The station itself was a marvel. Built in less than 6 months using human rapid construction techniques, it could accommodate 10,000 beings from hundreds of different species. Each section had been carefully designed for different atmospheric requirements, gravity levels, and environmental needs. Walking through its corridors felt like moving through a dozen different worlds. Maya Chun stood at the main entrance, greeting arrivals personally. She wore a simple suit in earth blue, her only adornment a small pin showing the Open Alliance symbol, a circle of stars with no center. No hierarchy, just connection. Admiral Dask was among the first to arrive. He came alone, without his fleet, wearing a dress uniform rather than battle armor. Maya noticed and appreciated the gesture. Admiral, she said, extending her hand in the human greeting. Thank you for coming. Dask gripped her hand carefully, aware that his strength could easily hurt a human. I admit I'm curious. You've made a bold move, Ambassador. Perhaps too bold. Perhaps, Maya agreed. But my great-grandmother once said that humanity is very good at exceeding expectations. I'm hoping the galaxy is ready to do the same. Over the next hour, more arrivals came. To everyone's surprise, they weren't just minor species eager for human technology. The Luminari sent an entire delegation, their golden forms pulsing with excited light. The Nethrans sent their high crystallographer. Even some Valorian scientists came, defying their government's official boycott. Zethan arrived last, the archivist's crystalline body reflecting the station's lights and complex patterns. Maya greeted the ancient being with deep respect. Archivist, Zethan. I'm honored you came. How could I not? Zethan replied, I am watching a new chapter of galactic history being written. It is my purpose to witness and record such moments. Though I confess I never expected to see one quite like this. We learn from the best, Maya said. You taught us that we were too young to matter. So we decided to prove that youth has value, that new perspectives matter, that being a footnote doesn't mean being forgotten. The summit began in a massive circular chamber where delegates could see each other clearly. There were no assigned seats, no hierarchy of position. Everyone gathered as equals. It was so different from the Council's rigid structure that many delegates seemed uncertain where to stand. Maya stepped into the center. Thank you all for coming. I know many of you have taken significant risks to be here. Your governments may disapprove. The Council certainly does. But you came anyway, because you understand that the galaxy needs to change. A Valorian scientist, a woman with skin that shimmered like starlight, spoke up. Ambassador Chun, your technology is impressive. But sharing it freely undermines the entire galactic economic system. Trade agreements that took millennia to negotiate become worthless. Species that built their economies on selling certain technologies will collapse. You're right, Maya admitted. We're disrupting everything. But let me ask you this. How many species has the Council dismissed as too young or too primitive? How many worlds were designated as too poor to help? How many civilizations never reached their potential because they were locked out of the economic system? She activated a holographic display that showed data Zidane had provided from the Great Library. In the last 10,000 years, the Council evaluated 3,847 species for membership. Only 291 were accepted. The rest were classified as minor species or observers. Of those rejected species, 127 have gone extinct. Not from natural causes, but from stagnation. They were told they weren't good enough, and eventually they believed it. The chamber fell silent. Many delegates had never seen these numbers presented so starkly. The Open Alliance isn't about destroying the Council, Maya continued. It's about offering an alternative. A place where species aren't judged by their age, but by their potential. Where knowledge is shared rather than hoarded. Where cooperation creates abundance instead of scarcity. A creche officer, younger than Ask, stood up. Pretty words, human. But you're still asking species to gamble their futures on your promises. What happens when you get bored of helping everyone? What happens when you decide you want something in return? Maya met his gaze steadily. That's a fair question. Here's our answer. Everything we've shared, we've made open source. The gate technology, the medical advances, the energy systems. We're not keeping secrets. Any species can study what we've built and improve on it. We don't want to be the center of a new empire. We want to be the spark that lights 1,000 fires. A luminary elder floated forward, her golden light pulsing with interest. This is why we came, honored Kresh. The humans aren't offering to save us. They're offering to teach us to save ourselves. There is a difference. And what do you want in return? The Kresh officer demanded, looking at Maya. Maya smiled. We want the galaxy to stop treating youth like a weakness. We want species to stop being dismissed because they're different or new. We want a future where every civilization gets a chance to contribute something unique. If you want to call that naive, go ahead. But 200 years ago, the Council said we'd never amount to anything. Look at us now. The summit continued for 3 days. There were arguments and debates. Some delegates walked out in anger. Others stayed and listened. Slowly, a structure began to emerge. The Open Alliance would have no central government, no ruling body. Instead, it would operate on a network model. Species could join, share what they wanted, take what they needed, and contribute what they could. There would be minimum standards for membership, but they focused on behavior, not technology level. No conquest. No genocide. No enslavement. Beyond that, each species could develop at its own pace. On the second day, something unexpected happened. Admiral Ask stood up and made an announcement that stunned everyone. I have been authorized by a faction of Kresh military leadership to announce our withdrawal from the Galactic Council, he said. His voice formal but firm. We are requesting to join the Open Alliance as founding members. The Kresh have been warriors for millennia. We built our civilization on strength and conquest. But perhaps the humans are showing us a different kind of strength. The chamber erupted. A major council species was defecting. Others would follow. The structure that had governed the galaxy for 50,000 years was cracking dog by the third day. 17 species had formally joined the Open Alliance. Hundreds more sent observers. The Valorians remained officially opposed, but their scientists were already collaborating with human researchers. The Luminari announced they would maintain membership in both the Council and the Alliance. Serving as a bridge between old and new, Zethan approached Maya as the summit was ending. You have changed everything, young human. The galaxy will never be the same. We didn't do it alone, Maya said. Your ancestor, the archivist who cataloged us 200 years ago, gave us exactly what we needed. Freedom to be ourselves. I am that archivist, Zethan said gently. My kind does not die easily. I was there when your great-grandmother stood before the council. I remember thinking she seemed disappointed but not defeated. Now I understand why. Maya's eyes widened. You remembered us all this time? I remember every species I catalog, Zethan said. It is my gift and my burden. And I must tell you something. When I filed humanity's report 200 years ago, I added a personal note to your entry in the Great Library. Would you like to know what it said? Please. Zethan's crystals pulsed with a warm light. I wrote, Classification, Minor Emergent Species. Predicted Development, Standard. Personal observation. These beings have a quality that defies quantification. When told they were not enough, they did not despair. They became curious. Watched them carefully. Footnotes sometimes contain the most interesting information. Maya felt tears forming in her eyes. You believed in us even then. I believed you would do something, Zethan corrected. I did not imagine it would be this. You have proven that youth is not weakness. That new perspectives matter. That the galaxy has been stagnant too long, and change was necessary. Whatever happens next, Ambassador Chun, you have ensured that humanity will never be a footnote again. The summit ended, and delegates returned to their homes carrying news that would shake their worlds. Some would be celebrated. Others would be branded traitors. But none of them could ignore what they had witnessed. The birth of something new. The Galactic Council met in emergency session to address the crisis. They debated sanctions, military action, diplomatic isolation. But in the end, they could not agree on a response. The ancient species were too divided, too slow, too locked into old patterns. Some wanted to destroy the alliance. Others wanted to learn from it. Most just wanted things to go back to the way they were. But the galaxy doesn't move backward. Over the next decade, the Open Alliance grew rapidly. Species joined not for economic gain, but for the promise of cooperation and mutual respect. Human-gate technology spread across the galaxy, connecting worlds that had been isolated for millennia. Medical advances saved billions of lives. Energy technology restored dying planets. The Council didn't collapse, but it transformed. Some species remained loyal to the old ways, and that was fine. But many began to adopt alliance principles, even while remaining Council members. The rigid hierarchy softened. The arbitrary restrictions eased. The ancient species began to remember what it felt like to be curious, to question, to grow. Maya Chun retired from her role as Earth's ambassador after 20 years of service. She was only 50 years old, still young by galactic standards. She settled on one of the new worlds, a planet that had been designated as worthless by the Council, but transformed into a paradise by alliance. Cooperation. She often thought about her great-grandmother Sarah, who had stood before the Council and accepted their judgment with grace, who had come home and told humanity they were dismissed as footnotes, who had sparked a revolution by refusing to accept that judgment as final. Sometimes Maya would stand under an alien sky and look up at the stars, connected now by gates that humanity had built. Ships from 1,000 species traveled freely, sharing knowledge and culture and hope. And she would smile, thinking about that meeting 200 years ago, about how the Council had tried to make humanity small, insignificant, forgettable. They had failed spectacularly. Humanity had refused to be a footnote in galactic history.